I hope your week is going well, and I hope that I can give you guys some helpful pointers on parenting during a pandemic. My name is Dr. Misha Martin, and I'm a pediatrician. I've been in practice for 20 years. I also have 3 children, so I'm a mother too, although my children are older. I have 2 college-age boys, and my daughter is 16. And, you're always a mother. It doesn't matter how old your kids are. And we're all navigating this new era in our lives and doing the best we can. And it's all new. So when Chris asked me to put together a talk, I was like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about because this is brand new. But I think a lot of principles of parenting never really change. You just have to kind of highlight some of them when we're in a stressful time. So I plan to do that for you today. And then I'm really excited to share this information, and I have listed where I trained on this first slide, but I'm just going to dive right in and we'll get through the slides, and hopefully at the end I can answer some questions if y'all have any questions for me. So yes, we're parenting, which is already a difficult job on top of being in a pandemic. And I love this slide because this is what we're all doing, right? We are cooking, we are grading papers or helping with homework while somebody might be crying, and we're also having to cook. And so we are juggling everything, which we already were before, and now we're just juggling more things. So it's very, very stressful. I understand that. Part of me feels like, are we really doing something new, or are we just going back to the basics? And for you, any of you old enough to have watched this series, it's just kind of maybe going back to a simpler time. And I don't know if any of us look as happy as the Ingalls family, but they didn't worry about calculus. They weren't worrying about internships or what's the plan for next fall. They were just going through each season and living one day at a time. And I think that's kind of what we're doing right now as well. And a little bit tongue in cheek here, but there's some goals of parenting, and the top goals are keeping them alive, right? Providing food and shelter, which we're all doing, but we're doing it in the face of a quarantine. But, just to keep in mind that this is what we're doing, and these are the basics, and the rest of what you can accomplish is really considered icing on the cake. So there's many issues with quarantine, right? We're now all settling into the new normal. There's so many unknowns, but what is known right now? What is known is we're having fears, anxiety, problems predicting the future. Some of us may have fears regarding finances, working from home, being laid off, homeschooling our children. But what is a definite known is our love for our children. So I really, find right now, even with my own children, is that it's best to talk about your fears instead of leaving them up in the air, because they know when you're worried. So you might as well just come out and tell them honestly. And I always find, for older children especially, that honesty is the best policy. And I have had some fears being a doctor in the COVID time, so I have had to talk to my own children about my fears. And we have cried a little bit, and we have used a lot of humor. I don't think I could have gotten through medical school without humor, and I always picked humorous friends to hang out with because it's just a great way to get through something stressful. And sometimes it's morose, but it can really lighten the mood when you add a little humor to a grave situation. It's important to ask your child about their worries and their fears, because if you ask, sometimes they won't answer you right then and there, but eventually they may come to you. And when they do, you need to be ready to drop everything when your child starts talking. And they need to know that you're predictable in that you will drop everything when they want to share something. And I have been really surprised with my 3 children how much they have shared some unique problems, some insight, thoughts, their life struggles. And I have been a little like, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was like, they're telling me stuff that was going on the whole school year. And I am like, wow, they're just revealing this to me. And I drop everything and I make eye contact. And you can't be, multitasking and on your phone. You really, I am telling you, drop everything. They will love it. And you will get more conversations if you do that. I am a big proponent of making a list whenever life is getting overwhelming. And if you're going to make a list right now, I suggest that you think about the positives about being in quarantine. Think about the difficulties, because when you can list these things and you see them in black and white, you can approach them more systematically. Every morning I make a list of the things I have to do because we're all a little scatterbrained. It's hard. Working is hard, and working under quarantine makes everything harder. And our kids are doing that as well. So make a list of what you need to do today, what you have to do, and then you can think about how you're going to get those things done. I think that there's a lot of negatives, but it's really important to list the positives. And now that we all have a little extra time because we're not maybe running around, driving, commuting, taking kids here and there, there may be things that you've always wanted to do or your children have always wanted to do. Make a list of those things and maybe make a list as a family, because I feel like as quickly as we all went into quarantine, this is suddenly going to be over. And we won't be ready for when it's over. And that's why I like making a list. Stressing less means that you can accomplish more. So we're all stressed, but if we can stress less, then we can get through this. And I am a very optimistic person. That's just my nature, but I really do feel that you can be successful, but it starts in your mind, right? So if you can believe that you can do this and that you can be successful, then you can accomplish your goals. And this is, where parenting gets really, really tough, but I think you can turn the stress into your favor. So I think you're all super moms and super dads, and or you can be if you're not quite feeling there, and that's okay. But the first thing that's the most important is to create healthy habits, right? That's for COVID and that's for any time. So it's really important that you put these things first for yourself and for your children: healthy food, exercise, meditation, and sleep. And I believe if you can do these things, you can accomplish your goals. So how to create time for all of these things, right? You're like, what is she talking about? And I remember having little ones. So even though mine are older, I do really remember having little ones, and I'm talking to moms all day long about having little ones and trying to do crazy things like working from home while your kids are at home. It's like feels impossible. But I really am a proponent of early to bed and early to rise. And you may have to think about when you're going to work, because your kids need your attention. I had a mom in my office yesterday who I really had to tell her, your kids need your attention. They're used to having teachers giving them attention all day long. And if you're not paying attention to them, they will struggle. And so when are you going to do your work? Are you going to do it early in the morning? Are you going to do it late in the evening? Are you going to enlist help? Maybe it's an older sibling that you're paying. Maybe you're getting an online tutor. Maybe you're getting a college kid who's home. There are all kinds of ways to get some virtual help. If you can't get virtual help, you really feel like you need to have a babysitter, then you are considering the risks and the benefits. If you get somebody in your home to take care of your baby, for instance, because you have to work all day and you have meetings, then you just understand that his or her, your babysitter's family becomes your family, and you're exposing each other to the virus. Okay, so then consider your daily schedule, prioritize your day. Always begin with time for yourself. Self-care is very important. It's just like when you're in the airplane and you put your oxygen mask on yourself first, right? So if you can wake up early enough for a little bit of movement, it can be 5 minutes, even a stretch, get your shower, have a little time for yourself, have your coffee, but you can't do those things. You can't begin that day if you haven't had a good night's sleep the night before. And I am finding a lot of my parents are binge watching and they are sucked into something. I'm sucked into something right now. And I actually had to tell my husband, I have to watch this way before bedtime because it gets me all anxious and riled up because it's very suspenseful and then I can't fall asleep. So I'm watching my show at like 4 o'clock so that before bed I'm doing something more relaxing like reading, and try to limit your daily news feed. Try not to watch the 10 o'clock news or 11 o'clock news because that will keep you up. So you can tell I'm really big into sleep. When I was in residency, my research project was on sleep and babies. So like it just goes way back for me. I've been preaching about sleep for 20 some years. Any of the slides that I made that don't have pictures is because I've made these this week because I kept thinking of other things I wanted to add. And I think that now our short-term stress response is over. You know, we've had that response and it's leaving us feeling depleted now. Kind of like when you just had a baby and that first 2 weeks you're going, and then after 2 weeks you are exhausted. So now we really need to be planning for the next 1 to 2 months and still trying to take one day at a time. And everything that I'm reading and what I feel as a pediatrician is trying to have a regular weekly schedules, just like you did before, kind of mirror what you did before COVID. I gave some examples there, just so that the days aren't running into each other and Saturday feels like Wednesday. Saturday should not feel like Wednesday. So, you know, try to think about for your family how that might look. I read this article, a friend of mine actually did an article in USA, I think it's USA Today, but she wrote that Western children are experiencing loneliness, fear, and confusion similar to what she's seen in refugee children abroad when she did some work. And this is really, I'm just starting to see this in my office now, that my children, my patients are starting to have anxiety and panic attacks. And they're lonely. My own child, my 16-year-old, has said she misses her friends. So even though you're all together and your family, it's not quite the same, right? And so they're really, really lonely. And some of your children may be becoming clingy, may be having sleep issues, or if you have older children, they may start to become withdrawn. So they're looking to you parents as their source of stability through this time. So yeah, back to the sleep. I promise I won't harp on it too much more, but sleep hygiene for everybody is important because you're engaging parts of your brain that help you make decisions, and that is your frontal lobe. And you want to have a really strong connection between your frontal lobe and your amygdala, which is that tiny little red part in that middle of the brain. That's the part that you will engage when you have a severe threat. If you have a mild threat, your frontal lobe, which is the parent in the room, right? Everybody wants a good frontal lobe because that's how you make good decisions. It will override the amygdala if there's a mild threat. But if the threat is really strong, your amygdala will overpower your frontal lobes. And then you start to make bad decisions, or you yell and you scream at your children, which is never makes a mom or dad feel good. So that's why I am so into sleep, exercise, and meditation, because these are the key players that really help you to engage your frontal lobe, to be in charge of your emotions and your decisions. And you want that as a parent for your children, and you want that for yourself. And, you know, like I said, I like to have a sense of humor, even if it's a little bit, you know, maybe inappropriate. But you know, if you're stressed and you let that amygdala start making all your decisions, this is what it can lead to, and nobody wants that, right? And we're all going to gain a little bit of weight, and that's okay. So here we get into my favorite part of stress reduction, which is mindful movement and meditation. So how do you do that with kids, right? Mindful movement can be focused activity. It doesn't have to be long, but it should be every day and frequently if you can. So it's time to be creative, right, with what you have at home, because nobody has money to be spending right now. And you probably have a lot of junk in your house. So you just have to go on a little hunt and really think about what you used to do in the olden days. I'm turning 50 this year. So if you're not that old, just ask somebody who's older, or ask your mom or your grandma, because they're the experts at entertaining with very few items. So you can make Play-Doh and play with it. Coloring books, tracing, cutting out pictures out of magazines. You guys can read the list there, but there's so many fun things that we used to do as kids, you know, and in my day, I grew up in this country in a small coal town in Pennsylvania, and my mom said, you're going outside and don't come back, right? And we would go out for hours, and you can't really do that in quarantine or in this day and age. But these are the things that we used to do over and over and over again with a sibling. Now, if you have an only child, it makes this a little bit harder, but I still think that you could probably figure it out and get some things done. And like collecting shells, flowers, rocks, or whatever your child likes collecting can be very, very meditative. Hiking, biking can be very meditative. We have a pitching machine because I had a baseball player, and that can be very meditative. So that repetitive over and over again action, just like drawing or coloring, is very meditative for your children. I do have a website there that I like. It helps you think of games and ways to do walking meditations. A walking meditation is really relaxing. It's one of my favorite things to do. We have a labyrinth at SoulScience, and you can make labyrinths with some sidewalk chalk. Just go on YouTube and you'll see how to do it. But a labyrinth is a kind of like a maze, but you don't get lost. There's one way into the center, and you take the same way out, and it twists and turns, and you can't figure out the path until you've gotten to the center. And it can take you a long time if you do a really intricate labyrinth, but you just kind of lose yourself in the maze, putting one step in front of the other. And when I've done them, I've just come to some really amazing realizations. I find it really relaxing and really therapeutic mentally. And you can do that for your children. You can make really simple ones for them. And I like this breath work. If you have your child raise his or her hand and trace fingers up and down while inhaling and then exhaling, you can do all 5 fingers and move to the other hand. So you're basically just kind of tracing the fingers up and down. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. It's a great 2-minute, meditation for adults and for children, especially if you're really high strung or getting worked up over homework. Take a little break and do the finger tracing. Even really little ones can do this. They don't know they're doing it, but breathing while looking at blowing bubbles, taking a cotton ball in the palm of your hand and blowing on it. These can just kind of engage that relaxation response. Your parasympathetics will be engaged and override your scared sympathetic response, and then you can function better. I love candle meditation. Everyone who's sat in front of a fire, whether that's a bonfire or your fireplace, you know how mesmerizing that can be. It can instantly take you to a deep and relaxed state, and it's so simple. And you can do this with younger children. You can even get a battery-operated candle if you want to give to your younger child so that they can do it whenever they want to. And you can just focus on the flame, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, do an evening little bonfire, and you know that those conversations just start flowing. Old stories, ghost stories, whatever your family is interested in is a really wonderful thing to try to do. I have teenagers in my office who have discovered drawing mandalas. You can YouTube these. I've never done one personally, but I'm told they're very simple. I'm not an artist, but your teens or preteens can probably figure this out and draw mandalas and then color them in. And I think they're really pretty and very meditative. So moving on to some other factors in helping you parent during a time of COVID is Mealtimes. I think that it's important right now when we're all together to take a break and make Mealtimes an occasion, because there's really nothing else to look forward to, right? I mean, and I've been seeing on Facebook how much people are enjoying what they're cooking and not eating fast food or going out and making it this really momentous family occasion, when we're doing this in my household as well. So each of your children can have a job if they're old enough. I've even, when I was raising my little ones, my 3-year-old could clean the table with a sponge. You know, like, you can find little things. She used to even push a little vacuum, a tiny little vacuum. So whatever you can find for your kids to mix and get involved in mealtime, whether they're younger or older, is a positive thing and is helpful to you, right? And chores have kind of gotten out of style because our kids are so busy, but this is the time to enlist the chores if you haven't already done that, so everyone has a predictable chore. And maybe you'll have questions about how to get your children to do chores, and I have answers for you if that's a question for you. And then I love this making traditional foods. If you have traditions passed down, my family's Indian, so I threw up an Indian picture. That's not my family, I just grabbed that from the internet. But I've been making Indian dishes and calling my mom, thankfully she's still alive, to tell me the health benefits of some of these Indian dishes, and really saving money, right? These people, the people who came, the generations before us, they knew how to cook and make things stretch. So if you're on a budget at your household, or even if you're just trying to not have to go to the grocery store so often and really stretch things, I'm buying a lot more lentils because Indians ate lentils and rice all the time, and it was very nutritive. And now I'm finding different ways to cook them. So that's kind of new for me. If you're thinking, what's the right types of foods, right? We're still trying to be healthy, and brain health also begins with good food. Then the Mediterranean diet is the diet that I always recommend. And so I've thrown up this slide to show you that mostly it's fruits and vegetables, nuts and legumes, healthy grains, and then your meats and fish, but it's heavy on the fish and seafood, Then your meats are at the top, so it's a little less with the meats, eggs, cheese, and yogurt. And then sweets, of course, are there, but not a very small portion of what you're eating. And the red wine is for adults. Okay, and then I'm a big proponent of exercise. I'm probably as big on exercise as I am on sleep. And in our practice, we do a depression screening questionnaire for all our children who are 13 and up. And they score it. The children actually read the screening questionnaire. They don't know it's a depression screening questionnaire. It just asks questions, they fill it out, and they score it from 0 to 3. And each question is 0 to 3. And all my athletes, almost all of my athletes, will score 0, which is where you want to be. It makes a wonderful antidepressant. There is a study that went head to head with Prozac and exercise versus exercise. Exercise is as effective as Prozac for depression. I'm not saying to stop your antidepressants if you're on antidepressants, but if you are on an antidepressant, you should be exercising. And it's just a great preventative for children. And right now, we should all be getting outside for our walks or whatever it is we do, not just once a day. It has to be more because there's nothing else to do. And we're all like feeling so cooped up that if you can, even on a rainy day, get outside, because the light that you'll get on a rainy day is still very, very bright. And it's that's a whole nother talk on circadian rhythms. But it will, just trust me, it does wonders for you, but you probably actually have to get out twice a day in a COVID time. So I have a soccer player and I have a baseball player. I'm really sad that my Nats are not playing right now because I was really looking forward to this season. And then I had a rhythmic gymnast who's now a POM. And I don't say that you have to do this type of exercise. It can be a non-traditional sport. It could be fencing, it could be archery, it could be bowling, it could be a passion that's not a sport. Maybe it's chess playing, but I do really like the physical movement and activity. It could be yoga, it can be dance, it could be just walking by yourself, listening to music, and all of the reasons I listed here as to why I love exercise for children. If they can engage in a passion of some sort, it increases their self-esteem, their social circle, their body image, conflict resolution, mental endurance, grit, healthy risk-taking, and for all of us, anti-aging promotes resiliency. And I believe everything that you need to learn in life can be learned on a playing field. And you can also learn some bad things, so you got to take the good things, right? And if your child is playing a sport or has some passion for something, try to remain positive or neutral through it, because that's the quickest way for them to lose that passion is when you're over the top with their sport. And then finding the passion that matches the child. So just because I was a gymnast doesn't mean my child's going to be a gymnast, right? So here's an example for a schedule that you could use if you haven't come up with your own schedule now that you all are homeschooling. So, you know, have a time of just waking up. Everyone should wake up slowly, right? We should all kind of ease into our day. That's naturally how life should be, even when we're not in a pandemic, is that we should get up early enough so that we're not racing around, getting ready for the day. And then maybe at 8 a.m. you start a couple of your subjects. I see I have a misspelling here, I'm sorry. And then at 9 a.m. maybe you have a break for some independent activity. And this would give you time to have schedule a work meeting. And then you have your snack. And then maybe you have lunch and some more English or writing or whatever is next. And then silent reading at 1. And then 4:30 is snack and homeschool, and you maybe pick another subject. And, you know, put this schedule up, whatever you come up with. And that way the kids don't have to ask you, what am I supposed to do next? And I'm going to go into this in more detail. I do think that if you have special needs children, that you are going to have way more structure and way more help. And that may mean coming out of your family, and asking for help from somebody else if you're trying to work from home. And then scheduling the time that you're working in between these times and sharing this schedule with your co-parent if you have a co-parent. A lot of times I will ask the co-parent, well, what are you doing? And, I'm not coming down on dads, but a lot of times this role falls on the moms. And so then the dads, it's not like they don't want to be helpful, they just don't know what to do, and you have to tell them what to do. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's the dad doing all of this and has to tell the mom what to do, or a partner, right? Or maybe you're a single mom and you have to do all of this by yourself, or a single dad. So then you have to enlist the help maybe of somebody else, extended family member or a neighbor or something like that. And I think that that's okay. But we should all try to be help. And if you are two working parents, maybe you're taking shifts. Or I talked to a family yesterday, the dad works crazy hours, he cannot help, and he's off out of the house, but he's off on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so I said, why don't you make some of those school days a Friday or Saturday so that dad has a couple days that he's doing school and mom can do her work. And then make sure that you are talking to your children and enlisting their help when you're creating the schedule, that you cover all the ground rules, right? I saw on Facebook, one of my friends posted that a mom put a list on her office door that said, these are the answers to your questions. It's in the refrigerator. It's in the laundry. Don't bother me unless you're on fire, I'm on fire, or the house is on fire. Like, it was this crazy list. And so, you're just preemptively telling your children, these are the rules, this is the schedule, and make sure that they know what they're supposed to do when they're finished with a certain task. And you can make an activity basket like this for, I think, any age child. And that way, if they have finished an assignment, then they know, okay, they can go to the activity basket because you're in a conference or you're doing your work and they're not to be bothering you. They can get into this activity basket when they're done, the board basket. And you know what? If they're bored, that's okay, right? Our moms told us, only boring people are bored, right? That's what my mom always told me. And I was forever saying I'm bored. And when my children told me I'm bored, I thought that's my just desserts, because I was always telling my mom I'm bored. But it's okay to be bored, and let them be bored, because that's when their creativity should really kick in. So don't feel like you have to be the entertainment coordinator 24/7. I used to really, this is my quote, I am not the entertainment director. So, and I'm not a walking refrigerator either. So these are the things I used to tell my children. So creating a work zone is really important. Making sure that your children have a place where they have their work zone, and that you have your work zone, and your co-parent, if you have one, also has a work zone. And preferably it's not your bedrooms. If it has to be your bedroom, maybe it's a corner of it that you can put something over top. Having your office in your bedroom is really stressful for you and makes it hard to sleep for you or your children. I saw this in the New York Times, this psychologist made her office in her bathroom because she can lock her door, her kids can't get to her. And, I don't know, it looks pretty cozy for a bathroom. And I think it functions, and I think she does her telemedicine there. And then I love this picture because dad is doing his work and the kids are doing their work on the ground, and it builds a culture. You might want to build a culture where your kids are welcome to help you when you're on your calls. I think, Chris, one time I saw one of your kids on the call and I loved it. We're all human, we're all working with our children at home. And I love that this is a picture of a dad And sometimes, and not to be, too sexist, but sometimes the kids, they just behave better for the dads. Like they'll actually sit there and do that with the dad in the room, whereas with the mom in the room, they won't. They'll bother you. I mean, that's how my kids were with me and my husband. So I think dads can be really, really important in this time when we're all at home. If you need to, consider switching your weekend and weekdays, if that makes it easier for you when you're working at home, so that you can work and then you're actually on Saturdays and Sundays, you're homeschooling. If you have a child that really needs a lot of assistance, this may work better for your work week. I think taking a vacation, if you have time off right now, if you have time off, take a vacation week, because then you're not juggling two jobs, right? You can just be the full-time parent and enjoy the kids and do their homeschooling, and you're not working. So consider, if you have 4 weeks of vacation a year or 2 weeks of vacation a year, maybe you take a vacation so that you're not multitasking. And then really celebrate the end of the day with some kind of tradition that you're starting, whether it's a cup of tea, a walk, or a bike ride with your kids, ice cream sundaes, a game of something, ping pong, checkers, getting into a book that you're all reading together as a family. I think doing these kinds of things, children love these kinds of evening rituals, and it celebrates the end of the workday, right? And then maybe celebrating the end of the work week. So even with me and with my older children, I am making a Friday evening celebration. So, and it's kind of funny for my teens and young adults, because they feel like they're kids again, because I'm like, it's movie night, it's Martin movie night, and we're each taking turns who gets to pick out the movie. You can go out for ice cream. When the weather gets better, consider doing an outdoor movie event. Teaching kids to relax is really important. I think kids don't necessarily know how to do that, and maybe we haven't been great examples. I know I'm not always the best example of relaxing because I'm busy all the time, but showing them that it's okay to just lay around and read a book for an afternoon, that's what people used to do. Really protecting your kids from the constant news feed. I think this is so important. Children have all kinds of worries right now, and they know that it's here, and we don't have to continuously talk about it and look at it and report the numbers. So really protect yourself and your children from these kinds of images. I like this quote: life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you have to keep moving. So really important to just keep putting one foot forward, take one day at a time. Remember these parenting principles: sleep, nutrition, exercise, and diet. These are my top areas of focus in raising children, and this never changes, even when we're not in a pandemic. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on the experience. So take some time to consider journaling, you and your children. I have started journaling just as a physician because we're making history right now. What we're experiencing will be in history books. And, so it is quite crazy what we're going through. And if you're not journaling and spending some time reflecting on life and having some maybe philosophical discussions with your spouse, with your children, you're going to miss maybe the best part of being in this quarantine. So, what pleasures did you rediscover? What have you learned already? What do you want to learn? Don't miss opportunities with your children to learn and grow, and consider teaching your children something amazing. And my definition of amazing can be, you taught your daughter how to make your grandma's meatballs, like that. I saw one of my friends posted that on her Facebook, and I know this woman, she travels the world. She's in Africa like every other week, And for her to have had a moment to teach her daughter her grandma's meatball recipe, I thought that was amazing. My daughter just told me 2 days ago that she was sad that she didn't know more about her Indian culture. And so I was like, oh my gosh, really? I didn't know you wanted to know all this. And so this is where we're from in India. The state is called Orissa. And so I started talking to her about this, and she told me she wants to learn the language. So I called up Grandma. I know. And so we're online and looking up sentences and words, and we're going to do some Zoom tutoring and get her to learn some of her culture, her language. She's also decided to create a nutrition blog for teens. She's having some team meetings and workouts with her POM team, but she told me that she's starting to feel really lonely and missing her friends, and so I'm arranging for some safe meetings for her and her friends. They have to be with supervision because I don't trust teens to do a really good job. So we're arranging things where they can safely see each other because, you know, mental health has to be really a focus as well as physical health. And one day, this is our SoulScience Health and Wellness, and we had a bunch of lady doctors come for a retreat, and one day we'll be together soon. So now I'm open for questions. And I don't know how you want to do this. If you guys have questions, if you want to put it in a chat.
What I was going to do is let's exit out of the share.
Okay.
I think it'll be easier for us to see everyone. That's beautiful. I mean, I'm going to start with a question and
Okay.
I'm hopeful people will follow. But one of my questions was, you know, you talked about being honest with your kids. Like, where's the line with honesty? And I know obviously it has a lot to do with age and maturity, but I'm just curious, you know, what your thoughts are.
I think definitely it has to be age appropriate, right? So if you're talking to children who are like 5 or 6 and under, they really don't need to know much about any of the pandemic. You might say something simply like, you know, no, we can't do that because there's a rule. You know, you have to make up something creative, like there's a rule that we're not allowed to be on this playground anymore because they're going to be cleaning it for the next 3 months, or, you know, something crazy like that. But it'll have to be something creative to where you're explaining why your 5-year-old can't go do something or can't go see someone, but maybe you're not saying there's a pandemic and we're all going to get sick if we, you know, you can't stress out a small child like that. If you're having children who are already aware that there's this virus, right? You have either some really smart youngsters or you have older kids that already know, you can say, yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm worried. Or yes, I'm worried about grandma. And so we're going to be really careful so that everything goes according to plan, or things will go well. So you can say things that like, I'm worried, but be optimistic, and tell your child what you're doing to make sure that we all stay healthy. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So we also have a question that was, do you have specific advice to deal with only children during this time? I have only an 8-year-old child, and I worry a lot about her loneliness.
Yeah, I think depending on how severe the loneliness is for your 8-year-old, do you need to, you know, you could consider a lot of things. I could go as crazy as getting her a pet, you know, and a lot of people are doing this at this time. I have patients that are actually getting puppies, and it's wonderful for the family because it's a distraction and you have tons of time to do that. So that's one extreme, is getting a pet. Another is if you really feel like her mental health is at risk, then you may have to make some play dates where it's 6 feet apart, you know, like you're in the same yard outside, you're not coming inside, And this would probably have to be somebody who lives pretty close because you can't even use each other's bathrooms.
Yeah.
So you have to stay outside 6 feet apart. But maybe both kids are doing sidewalk chalk separately with their own chalk, right? Maybe you have a porch and your child is on the porch and her friend is down below. But you know, this is now the time where quarantine has gotten really old and we're not happy just staying inside anymore. And there needs to be a little bit of human connection for everybody. So I hope that answers your question.
I want another question is my daughter has 10, 8, and a 4-year-old, and she's finding it extremely difficult to parent and work from home. She's a single mom. Is it okay for her to enlist her 10-year-old to help with the younger ones?
Yeah, for sure. The 10-year-old would be great with the 4-year-old. Sometimes the middle child, the middle child can be a little more difficult with the older one because they're closer in age. So the 10 and 8 maybe not so great unless, you know, they'll play with each other and be really happy unless they're trying to kill each other. So the 10 and the 4-year-old would probably be the better team, or the 8 and the 4-year-old, depending on their personalities. And maybe there's some kind of reward for the older sibling, whether it's a monetary reward or they get to stay up later, you know, like, oh, I'll let you stay up 20 minutes later if you help the 4-year-old do X, Y, and Z. I always think that, especially with that age, and must be so difficult for a single mom, is that if the kids are really trying to kill each other and really on top of each other, that they need a lot of chores, a lot of work for these kids. So every time they start fighting, if she gives them a chore, then they'll stop fighting because they know what's going to happen next. There's lots of parenting books that I love, and your daughter might love Love and Logic. That is one of my favorite parenting books. And the other one is Have a New Kid by Friday. That's a really easy one that's kind of humorous. And so your daughter might like to read those books just to get everybody to cooperate a little bit better.
What was the second one? Love and Logic was the first.
And then Have a New Kid by Friday. That's a series, so you can get any of his books. There's Have a New Teen by Friday, Have a New Husband by Friday, I think there's Have a New Family by Friday, and they're really they're easy and they're funny. It's written by a psychologist who I think raised 5 children, and easy book to get through. You can read it in a day.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, I wanted to thank you so much, Dr. Martin. This is incredibly informative. I took a bunch of notes. Just so everybody knows, this will be up on the Flourish website tomorrow. So it's it's called the Green Room. And we will also have her slide presentation there as well. So if you want to look at that, you'll have an opportunity to do so. We really appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate Dr. Martin for assisting us. And we wish you a great weekend and hope to see you next week at all the Flourish activities that are available. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Dr. Martin. Bye-bye.
Welcome.